Hi everybody, or should I say greetings fellow mathematicians. I've decided to do some live videos again, so we'll see how that goes. I've got my coffee, I hope you have one too, and let's get started. The teaching resources included in this bundle are the Explicit teaching plan, the teaching videos, and the teaching PowerPoint, investigations, problem-solving PDF and PowerPoint, assessment, differentiation, intervention, and integration. And you can see from this graphic that all of these elements of the teaching resources are all linked. A quick look at a sample of the teaching videos. Depending on the complexity of the concept and of the concept level, there will be a different number of teaching videos. The teaching videos have been created to sound like I am teaching children, but they can be used for your own professional development and to deepen your own relational understanding before teaching. In fact, that's highly recommended. They're not designed to just show immediately to the children before you've watched them yourselves. The teaching videos contain the questions, the really important Socratic strategic questions that we want to ask the children, and that we want the children to turn and face a partner and ask one another. This will develop their mathematical meta-language as well as their capacity to explain, and will deepen their relational understanding. And you will find that by engaging children in substantive mathematical conversation like this, your own mathematical relational understanding will deepen as well. You can show a video or parts of a video to the class, but I highly recommend that you pause it after every Socratic strategic question has been asked, to allow the children to engage in that strategic mathematical conversation. Here is a sample explicit teaching plan. Each explicit teaching plan is set out in exactly the same way. The first page has the contents, so you can see here the segments in the explicit teaching plan. The number of segments is exactly the same as the number of videos, and the content of each segment in the teaching plan and in the video is exactly the same. So you can either read the explicit teaching plan, or you can watch the teaching video, or both, whichever way you want to prepare for teaching this concept. The segments don't represent one lesson. Each segment is designed to be taught over many lessons, and when we have a look in a minute at differentiation, you'll see what I mean by that. The teaching plans now also include information on integration and information on differentiation. The second page of the explicit teaching plan is an overview of all of the segments in the teaching plan. It includes some of the Socratic strategic questions that we want to ask, and it also includes what you might be doing, what the board might be looking like, what your anchor chart models might be looking like. From page 3 onwards, we have the explicit teaching plan in depth with all of the explicit strategic Socratic questions that are really important to get the children to engage in, to develop not just vocabulary, but mathematical meta-language. And the difference between vocabulary and meta-language is that meta-language is part of your normal vocabulary. You use it just really normally. You really have deep understanding of what it means, and it just becomes part of the way that you speak. This part of the teaching plan can be many pages long, and that's because it's designed to be dipped into and dipped out of as your professional teacher judgment and your knowledge of your children advises you to do that. As you're asking these strategic Socratic questions and you're getting your children to ask each other these strategic Socratic questions, you'll find you need to stop at a certain point to allow the children to go and investigate, still using this language as they discuss with one another what they're investigating, and then they come back the next lesson and we can move on, add to the already created anchor charts, which we'll be going through in a minute. The bundle also includes a teaching PowerPoint. As with all of the other resources, it's optional whether you want to use this. Use your teacher professional judgment and your knowledge of your students. Some PowerPoints you might use because, for example, this one on the screen, it's already done for you. Others you might look at and say, I don't need a PowerPoint for that. Completely up to you. However, it's important that it's all hands-on. So when you can see, for example, a picture of children here wiggling fingers, it's important that children wiggle their fingers. When you can see images here of blocks, it's important that children have their own blocks. Having said that, the teaching PowerPoint also follows the same sequence as the explicit teaching plan and the teaching videos. We're making them more and more interactive so you can put them onto slideshow mode and then just work through them. Again, use them however you want to. Again, this graphic just makes explicit how the explicit teaching plan, the teaching video and the teaching PowerPoint has a direct relationship to all other parts of the teaching resources. Let's look at a sample investigation. Again, depending on the complexity of the concept and of the concept level, there may only be one or two ways to investigate the concept, or there may be a lot. For this particular concept, there are a lot of different ways that children could investigate the concept. The first page of the investigations are always a summary, just sort of a list of all the activities, if you want to call them. I prefer to call them investigations because children are engaging with one another, they're talking to one another, they're asking each other Socratic strategic questions, they're explaining their understanding to one another. Because one thing that's missing from an activity as compared to an investigation is very often that deep mathematical meta language and children explicitly using mathematical meta language and the reasoning. So it's children explaining how they know, what they know, why they know, not just explaining what they're doing. The following pages each contain a printout if you want to use that. You could use it for homework, you could use it for if we're still doing distance learning, where the children can follow the step-by-step investigation, and any black line masters that are needed are also included in the investigations. The first investigation always follows the way that we have modelled in the explicit teaching. Again, with the investigations, these are resources. It's not a program. You can pick and choose from the different investigations. You might even have some children investigating using a different investigation to another one. But the thing that happens is they're all using exactly the same mathematical meta language. So it doesn't matter which investigation they are using, they are still able to discuss with other people around them using mathematical meta language and reasoning. This graphic is showing us that the investigations are intrinsically linked to all other aspects of the teaching resources as well. With the problem solving, we provide both problem solving PDF and PowerPoint. The first page of the problem solving PDF contains the answers. Then on following pages, you've got differentiated problems. Now the problems are differentiated into 3 levels. The first 2 levels are similar to one another, and then the third level always has an added level of complexity. We're going to be looking at differentiation in a minute, But a great way to allow children to differentiate for themselves is to allow them to choose the level of the problem that they are ready to investigate. Again, it's all the same mathematical meta language, it's the same mathematical concept. So even though I'm doing A and the person next to me is doing C, we can still have those deep relational mathematical discussions, explaining our understanding, explaining our reasoning using mathematical meta language, because we're working on the same concept but at a level that suits us. And we know it suits us because we are the ones who chose our level. Problem solving on the PowerPoint has a couple of advantages. Number one, you can put it up on the board, you can have a discussion about it. Number two, you can change the numbers or change parts of each problem if you've got different levels in your class to what I've included on the PowerPoint. Makes differentiation really easy. You could have the first problem with, say, teen numbers, the next problem with, say, 30s or 40s numbers, and then the last one could have 3-digit numbers. So you can change, you can add extra problems, you can have more than 3 levels. So you are in charge with the problem solving PowerPoint. Your professional teacher judgment, your knowledge of your children will allow you to target these problems, these really well-researched problems, using correct mathematical meta language to make sure that every one of your children is able to be investigating problem solving at their leading edge. Now, the reason that the first page of each problem has got the information covered up is because the first step in problem solving is read, but it's not read the entire problem, it's read the part that is asking you to find something out. So I have covered up everything except for the part that is asking the children to find something out. Over time we can show them the next part, which means now they're going to engage in what is it asking me to find out? What information am I going to need to find this out before jumping in and trying to solve the problem before they're actually ready. Every concept level has its own assessment, and this can be used as pre-assessment, as assessment during the teaching cycle, or as a post-assessment. Depending on the complexity of the concept and of the concept level, there may just be one assessment or there may be multiple assessments. This is a complex concept, so it actually has 3 different assessments. The first page of each assessment contains all of the levels of that particular aspect of the concept, and these are what I was saying before are the anchor charts. So these are what you will be creating in your classroom using the explicit teaching plan and using the videos, and if you want to, using the PowerPoints. You will end up with these created collaboratively with the children using Socratic strategic questioning. So these will then form the models that the children use when they are investigating the concept. Now, if you don't like these models and you haven't been using these models, feel free to use the same way of assessing, because this is formative and summative assessment. And not only that, the aspects of formative assessment are assessment for learning, which means the teacher is using their professional judgment and their knowledge of their students to differentiate, to use this assessment data to differentiate. But it's also assessment as learning, because as you'll see in a minute, the children get to choose the level that they want to investigate, that they want to show their deep understanding of. Now, of course, during the assessment week, we're walking around, we're roaming, we can guide children between levels. If they're choosing one that's too easy, up. If we're choosing one, if they've chosen one where they're showing non-productive struggle, we can move them back down. But this assessment as learning is really, really important, because when you think about it, the only person who really knows what a child is ready to learn or what a child is ready to demonstrate understanding of is the child. So this first page with all of the levels on it, we have included a star to demonstrate which levels in our teacher professional judgment, because we are also teachers, we may include in a pre-assessment. So on the next page, you've got the pre-assessment, but as I said, if you don't like that model, use your own. It also says that if you are unable to demonstrate your understanding using this model, just demonstrate your understanding using whatever model you want to. And then on the next page, we have a post-assessment. So the post-assessment includes the levels that we've actually been teaching in this level of the concept. Now that we have assessed, we can start to differentiate. Now, again, what you'll notice is that the way that we now explicitly teach and allow the children to investigate is exactly the same way as we just assessed. So intrinsically, every lesson is an opportunity for assessment of learning. If you want to do point in time, say this is where the kids were on the 5th of May, as learning, because the children are able to select the level that they are ready to investigate, and for learning, because we can also guide children to the levels that we think they are ready to investigate using all of this assessment data. So again, this has got a contents page because there's more than one concept. Sometimes they don't because there's only one concept within that level of the concept. The next page, so the first page of the differentiation again shows all of the levels. Now these stars have numbers in them. So the 1 means this is what in our teacher professional judgment we think might need to be included as anchor charts, collaboratively creating anchor charts using the questioning in the videos and the teaching plan and the PowerPoints to put up in the first lesson. Now your assessment data might tell you something different. You might think, I don't need that lowest level. Everyone's already got that level. I'm going to start at the second level and the third level. Completely up to you. But you're going to be using questioning during your explicit teaching. And it doesn't matter if you thought everyone had that, then when you started asking questions, you thought, but they don't have the language to explain. They just don't have this. You can drop back and do that lower level and have that up as a level, and then move on to the next level if children are ready. And you know when children are ready because they're still answering questions, they've still got the meta language, they're still going. Now, I highly recommend that you always put up a low level, always, because then your lowest child can still access the investigation. No child needs a teacher sitting with them because every child's level that is at their leading edge is going to be on the board. It might not be there in this first lesson. It might take 2, 3, even more lessons to actually get every child's level there, because seriously, if you've got, say, a year 2 class in place value, you literally might have 8, 10, 12 levels. If you've got a year 2 class in addition and subtraction, if you've got 22 kids, you could have 22 levels. How on earth is every child going to be investigating at their leading edge if you're assigning this group does this group does this, and whatever? By collaboratively creating anchor charts, you will end up with a wall that teaches. You will end up with so many levels on the wall, all in order, which means that every child can select the level that they are ready to investigate. Again, it's the same concept. The children can have substantive mathematical conversations because they're developing their mathematical meta language at the same time. So here we've got that we think that we should do these 2 levels first in the first lesson. We're going to then collect the children's books at the end of the lesson in the levels that they investigated. We can then move children up, we can move children back, and then we know exactly what levels to include in the next lesson. So again, we're suggesting in the second lesson we may need to reteach those 2 levels. Then by the third lesson, someone's ready to move up to the next level. But again, this is dependent on what is happening in your class. Now, initially, there's a lot of reading, there's a lot of watching, there's a lot of planning. But you can see we are now almost at the end of our year 1 place value. These anchor charts will stay up all year. Children will be investigating place value at least 1 lesson, possibly more, all year in year 1. which means that now the anchor charts are up. You may have to do some reteaching, but the kids are going to be developing their understanding through these levels. Now you might look at that and go, what, 4 levels for all of year 1? This is huge learning. It is going to take the children all year to get to the end of 2-digit standard and non-standard place value. Trust me. You'll even find some kids at the beginning of year 2 still don't have that. That's fine, because in year 2 we're going to put up these levels as well if our children show us that they need that. But we're not holding anyone back, because if children are ready for 3-digit place value, that level goes up too. The concept is the same, it's just the size of the numbers that are changing. The meta language is the same, the reasoning is the same, the relational understanding is the same. We talked a little bit about these intervention charts when we were looking at the investigations. The intervention charts are the same as that first level of the investigation, the first investigation, which is the same as the way that we're explicitly teaching, so it's the same as our anchor charts. But there may be some children who are ready to investigate this level, but the model, the process, is going to take up way too much cognitive load to allow them to investigate the mathematics. So you may want to give a child an intervention sheet to allow the cognitive load of the investigation process to be low enough that they can actually access the cognitive load of the mathematics that they're going to be learning. There is another use for these intervention sheets, and that is actually as intervention. So before, remember I said to you that even your lowest child doesn't need an adult sitting with them. Now that's because they are also learning at their leading edge. Now just because, say for example, they're in year 4 or 5 and their leading edge is 2-digit numbers, which in the syllabus is year 1, it's still their leading edge. They are still able to investigate at their leading edge independently. So by providing for them their own intervention sheet, they can have that on their table in front of them. So again, their cognitive load of what am I supposed to do? So they've got pictures. Flip the cards, draw your place value chart, describe it, whatever it is. If this is too hard, there are lower intervention sheets at lower levels. So go down the levels of the concept and pick an intervention sheet for that level. In this way, every child is learning independently at their leading edge. These kids are not sitting with an adult. The problem with sitting with an adult is twofold. Number one, the adult isn't available to the rest of the children. So you'll have other children who are not learning anything because they're either doing something that's beyond them or they're doing something that's already too easy for them. The other problem is that if a child can only do something with an adult sitting with them and they can't do it when the adult isn't there anymore, then they haven't learnt a thing. It's wasted everybody's time. Not only that, it makes that child know, I can only do this when an adult's with me. I can't do this alone. I'm not as good as the rest of the kids. By providing this differentiation, using investigation sheets, using anchor charts, using intervention sheets, means that every child is learning at their leading edge. I might be investigating teen numbers, the person next to me is investigating 3-digit numbers, someone else in the class is investigating decimals. The investigation process is the same. All of the anchor charts are up. Any of us that need it can have an intervention sheet, which means that we are all investigating the same concept at our leading edge. I can still turn to the person next to me and explain what I'm investigating and what I'm finding with teen numbers. The investigation sheets and the intervention sheets also contain all of the explicit mathematical meta language that I'm going to be using to explain. My partner can then explain how they're investigating 3-digit place value. It's the same meta language. We are learning together. I don't even notice that they're doing higher numbers. All I notice is that I am also able to explain. I am treated like everyone else in the class. It is inclusive differentiation. but it also allows your highest children to investigate at the highest levels. If they're past all the highest levels, we can include some enrichment activities that still mean that they're going to be using the explicit meta language to explain to their partner what they're finding. And the final part of this bundle that I'm really excited about, we're really working hard on this right now, is integration. So this example shows how addition and subtraction and place value are integrated. It then goes on to show you how you can integrate these concepts. So for example, I've started to investigate explaining numbers using place value. Now I'm going to be applying that understanding to adding and subtracting. When I start applying it, I'm getting a bit confused, a bit of non-productive struggle, so that no matter how hard I keep trying, it's just going to be way too complex for me. I can go back and investigate place value while the rest of the class is still investigating addition and subtraction. And because we've got anchor charts up for place value and anchor charts up for addition and subtraction, as we can see on this slide here, we can start integrating those anchor charts so that I can see this is the place value I'm using to add these numbers. This is the place value I'm using to add these numbers. And again, completely student-led, inclusive differentiation. Well, that was actually fun for me, and I've just about finished my coffee as I was doing that. One other video that I would really highly recommend you look at in conjunction with this. So this was basically a lot of the planning and that kind of thing. If you want to see what this looks like in the classroom, there's another video on the actual entire lesson, from the beginning of the lesson right to the end of the lesson, right to collecting the books. It explains the anchor charts as well. So I'll put a link to that here, and thank you.